The philosophy of the Vedas is enshrined in the Upanishads, which are their concluding portion and hence known in popular parlance as Vedanta. Our scriptures declare three fundamental real entities: Achit, Chit, Ishvara. Here, the universe is the insentient matter, Achit, which is the object of experience. The individual souls, also known as Jivatma, are the experiencing conscious subjects, Chit. And Ishvara, Brahman, the Lord, is the absolute ruling principle. Vedanta is composed of declarative statements which impart knowledge regarding Brahman's Swarupa, Rupa, Guna, Vibhuti and Aishwaryam, nature, form, attributes, properties and lordship. A chief difficulty in understanding the meaning of the Upanishads arises in determining the relationship of Brahman to the individual souls on one hand and to the insentient world of matter on the other. There are some verses in the scriptures which seem to declare that the world is unreal and is only an appearance in the ultimate analysis. There are other texts which affirm that the world is not just an appearance but real and distinct. The Upanishads may seem to contain apparently contradictory declarations concerning the relationship between Brahman, the individual souls, and matter. There are indeed passages which appear to lend support to every shade of thought. Only upon a diligent study and thorough analysis, it becomes undeniably evident that all the Vedas and Upanishads declare only one common message. Upanishad verses can be categorized into three types: Abheda Shruti, Veda Shruti, Ghataka Shruti. The Abheda Shrutis seem to state that the universe of all Chit and Achit entities and Brahman are one and the same. These verses appear to prima facie assert the identity of a Jivatma, the individual soul, with Brahman, Tattvamasi, Aham Brahmasmi. These are few examples of Abheda Shrutis. On the other hand, the Bheda Shrutis seem to categorically declare the difference between Brahman and the universe of all Achit and Chit entities. These are the Upanishad passages which explicitly state the differences between a Jivatma and Brahman. Bhokta bhogyam preritaram chamatva jushtastatastena amrutatvameti. Nityo nityanam chetanas chetananam eko bahunam yo vidadhati kaman. These are few examples of Bheda Shrutis. The Ghataka Shrutis speak of the immanence of Brahman as the inner self in all sentient and insentient entities and declare that Brahman is the inner controller, Antaryami, present inside all Chit and Achit entities. The Sharira Atma Bhava, body-soul relationship between the universe of all Chit and Achit and Brahman is conveyed by the Ghataka Shrutis. Yah prativyam tishthan prativya antaraha yam prativina veda yasya prativi shariram yah prativim antaro yamayati yeshata atma antaryam yamritaha ya atmani tishthan atmanontaraha yam atmana veda yasyatma shariram ya atmanontaro yamayati yeshata atma antaryam yamritaha. These are examples of Ghataka Shrutis. Taking the cue from ancient philosophers like Vedavyasa, Badarayana, Dhanka, Dramida, Guhadeva, Kapardi, Bharuchi, Swami Ramanuja demonstrated conclusively that all parts of the Vedas and Upanishads declare in unison only one common message, and there cannot be any contradictions whatsoever. He was very particular that not a single verse from any Upanishad should be so interpreted as to be divested of its primary significance. In his commentaries, he pointed out how the Ghataka Shrutis synchronize and synthesize the other two types of verses and resolve the apparent contradiction in them. In light of the Ghataka Shrutis, it becomes quite clear that while the Abheda Shrutis declare oneness of reality, they only mean that nothing other than Brahman, qualified by the universe of Chit and Achit as his body, exists. In the same way, the Bheda Shrutis, when interpreted in the light of Ghataka Shrutis, convey that Brahman, the Paramatma, who is the inner controller, Antaryami of the universe, is distinct and different from the universe, which is his embodiment. The universe of all sentient and insentient are therefore distinct entities, but they are inseparably related to Brahman, precisely like a human body is related to its soul. Thus, the passages declaring distinction between Brahman, the material world, and the individual souls, and those affirming the identity of Brahman with Jiva and Jagat, do not in any way contradict. Brahman is the all-pervasive support and sustenance of the universe. As Lord Sri Krishna says in the Gita, he is like the string upon whom all pearls, that is, the infinite individual souls and matter, are threaded. The term Brahman signifies the Supreme Person, Purushottama, who transcends all imperfections and abounds in infinite auspicious qualities of unsurpassed excellence. Brahman is infinite, not just in physical terms, but in metaphysical and qualitative terms. Brahman is the absolute real abode of all consciousness. He is infinitely auspicious, infinitely blissful, infinitely merciful, infinitely beautiful, in fact, infinitely infinite. He is omniscient and omnipotent, from whom proceeds the creation, subsistence, and reabsorption of this wonderful universe, not to be comprehended by human thought. The relationship between God and the universe is one of love. As all this is but a conscious emanation from him, we are to him as a child is to a parent, as a friend is to a friend, and as a beloved is to a lover. Brahman also stands in relation to the material world and the individual souls as the inner self of each, providing the very basis for their reality. As such, Brahman has matter and individual souls as his body, and is therefore the Supreme Being in whom all reality is comprehended. All that we see is but a spilling from the plenitude of his glorious all-pervasive essence. This is why the favorite devotional name for God is Narayana, a name that beautifully conveys his immanence and transcendence at the same time. Chit, the sentient individual souls, can be defined as those spiritual entities which are self-manifest as I, and which are qualified by the characteristics of Adheyatva, always supported, Vidheyatva, controlled by a higher being, Seshatva, exists for the sake of the Supreme Being, and Anutva, atomic in nature. An individual soul is not only of the nature of knowledge, Jnana Swarupa, but also possesses knowledge as its attribute, Jnana Gunaka. The individual souls are eternal and imperishable. The individual soul is the essence of knowledge. This knowledge, in its attributive aspect, Dharmabhuta Jnana, gets contracted in samsara, worldly cycle of life and death. But it expands infinitely in the state of moksha. It becomes all-knowing and enjoys perfect bliss and love in divine communion. In this natural state, it yields its spirit to the will, glory, and adoration of the Supreme Lord. Achit, also known as Achetana and Prakriti, denotes the insentient matter which is devoid of knowledge. Matter can neither be created nor be destroyed. Matter may have different size, form, color, or format. Its nature is to change from one form to another. It neither knows itself nor anything. Though it is real and eternal, it is not absolutely independent, but is controlled by Ishvara and is dependent on him for its very existence. Its sole purpose of evolution into the physical universe of space and matter is to provide the necessary ground and opportunity for the individual souls to function and strive for release from bondage. The central theme of Vedanta is that all sentient beings, the infinite individual souls, and insentient entities, the infinite universe of matter, are organically related to God, Brahman, in the same way as an essential attribute is related to a substance. While a substance and its attributes are distinct, the two are integrally related, and as an integral complex whole, it is one. Thus, the oneness of ultimate reality that is declared in our scriptures is to be understood not in the sense of absolute identity, but as organic unity. In other words, Brahman alone, as organically related to Chit and Achit, is the one ultimate reality. As Lord Krishna declares in Gita, he has twin properties, one of lower nature and the other of higher nature. All of creation has its source in these two natures. While the world of matter constitutes his lower nature, his other property of higher nature comprises of the infinite individual souls. The analogy of a body-soul relationship between an individual soul and its embodiment, the human body, can also be used to comprehend this relationship between the universe of all individual souls and matter on one hand, and Brahman, the Paramatma, on the other. The human body is supported and controlled by the Jivatma, and it is an utility for the Jivatma. Similarly, the entire universe of sentient and insentient is supported and controlled by the Supreme Being and exists only to serve him. This relationship is known as Sharira Shariri Bhavam, where Brahman is the Shariri, the inner self, and the universe is his Sharira, his body. As all the individual souls and the world constitute his body, all names finally denote only the Lord. It is Brahman as associated with his inseparable properties, that is, individual souls and insentient matter in their subtle state, Sukshma Chitachit Visishta Brahman, that constitutes the material cause of the universe. In the state of dissolution, the cosmic matter as well as the individual souls exist in Brahman in an unmanifest form devoid of any names and forms. And when creation takes place, they become unfolded and assume names and forms. In other words, Brahman with Chit and Achit in state of non-differentiation, Sukshma Chitachit Visishta Brahman, becomes Brahman with Chit and Achit in a state of differentiation with an infinity of distinction in names and forms. Sthula Chitachit Visishta Brahman. Through his brilliant analysis, Swami Ramanuja upholds all the three streams of thoughts in the Upanishads, namely unity, plurality, and both. Unity is upheld because Brahman alone exists with all other entities as his modes. Both unity and plurality are upheld as the one Brahman himself has all the physical and spiritual entities as his modes and thus exists qualified by a plurality. Plurality is upheld as the three entities, the individual souls, the world of matter, and the Supreme Lord, are mutually distinct in their substantive nature and attributes, and there is no mutual transposition of their characteristics. The summum bonum is the vision of the Supreme Person known as Brahman or Sriman Narayana. As the vision of the Supreme is not possible through ordinary means of perception, he can be realized only through bhakti, which is a unique form of knowledge. When intelligence matures and lodges securely in mind, it becomes wisdom. When wisdom is integrated with life and issues out in action, it becomes bhakti. Knowledge, when it fully becomes mature, is bhakti, which is the highest end of spiritual existence. This bhakti can be brought about through the observance of one's dharma, contributory selfless duty, acquisition of jnana, discriminatory knowledge of the three fundamental realities, and practice of vairagya, detachment. Bhakti is loving meditation upon God. Bhakti is not mere emotionalism, says Swami Ramanuja. It involves training one's mind and intellect towards pure, continuous, unalloyed love of God. Non-stop or constant contemplation is the very essence of bhakti. Swami Ramanuja compares it to the continuous flow of oil when poured from one vessel to another. When the meditation attains the form of firm remembrance characterized by intense love, the vision of the Supreme is attained. While bhakti is one means of attaining the supreme goal, the other sure means prescribed in our scriptures is prapatti or sharanagati, which brings down God's grace to the aspirant in all natural downpour. Prapatti is wholehearted surrender, where one unconditionally submits oneself into the loving and caring hand of God. The conditions for prapatti are implicit unwavering faith and effacement of self-will to the complete operation of God's will alone. Spiritual progress is to evolve from a state of go to a state of let go, and finally reach a truly blissful state of let God. The ultimate goal to be realized is the vision of the supreme reality. Human bondage is service to the body with a false sense of independence from God, whereas true emancipation consists in service of God and a complete independence from the body. Moksha is an experience of absolute peace, perfection, bliss, and omniscience, untouched by the cosmic limitations of space and time. It is getting back home to our natural state of blissful communion with our Lord. It is eternal blissful service at the lotus feet of Lord Sriman Narayana and eternally experiencing the Lord in Sri Vaikunta Paramapada. Yo nityamachyuta padambuja yukmurukma vyamोहदस्तदितराणि तृणाय मेने अस्मद्गुरोर् भगवतोस्य दयैक सिन्धोः रामानुजस्य चरणौ शरणं प्रपद्ये. The holy feet of my master, Swami Ramanuja, are my sole refuge. For he is an ocean of mercy, and for him all else is dross other than the supreme wealth that is the feet of God.